Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Sri Gopalkrishna Gandhi and Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee. Before we begin, may I request everyone in this august audience to kindly put your mobiles on the switch off or silent mode. Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This evening is a very special evening, and on behalf of our library subcommittee, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you for being here. I would first like to thank two of my colleagues on the General Committee, Manoj Mohanka. Manoj, where are you? Yeah, Manoj Mohanka and Aruna Bodeb for making this evening possible. Please put your hands together for Manoj and Arunabo and the entire library subcommittee team for making this evening possible. I said a very special evening because our guest of honor and author this evening is a very special friend and mentor of our club, Sri Gopalkrishna Gandhi, who perhaps needs no formal introduction. Sir, each time you have visited our club and spoken on several occasions to our members and their guests, you have left an indelible impression on them and enlightened them on many subjects that you've spoken about. Thank you very much for making time to be here with all of us today and to share your thoughts on your latest book, The Undying Light, A Personal History of Independent India. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, a very special evening again, because in conversation with Sri Gopalkrishna Gandhi is our very own member, historian, author, and professor, Sri Rudrangshu Mukherjee, who also needs no formal introduction. Thank you, Rudrangshuda, for making time and agreeing to be in conversation with Sri Gandhi. There could be no better person than you to do the honors. In my mind, two questions are at the heart of this personal history of post-independence India. Is independent India impossibly fragmented or indissolubly united? Taking a cue from Ruskin Bond, who had written that religion did not make me an Indian, but history did, and in the long run, it's history that counts. Sri Gopalkrishna Gandhi, the author, has chronicled some remarkable events and indelible moments from India's modern history, from the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi, his grandfather in 1948, to Narendra Modi's reign, which began in 2014. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and over to you, Rudrangshuda.
Welcome once again, Gopal. And before we start the conversation, may I request you to read a couple of passages from the book so that the audience gets a flavor of what the book is about and also of your unique prose style.
Thank you, Rudra. Thank you, Shumit Babu. And thank all of you for being here today. It is not an easy thing to leave all one's many commitments, many affiliations, and go through a city full of heavy traffic and reach a venue on time. I know how difficult it is for all or any to do that, which places me in an obligation to make your efforts worthwhile, a very big obligation indeed. I will not take too much of your time. I know that when somebody says I'm going to read from a book and the audience sees that book with many flags in it, their heart sinks. There are only 3 flags, and there are only a few lines on each page that has been flagged. just start by saying that this book is not really a memoir, for my life does not deserve retelling. It is my recollections of events from what I have heard and from what I have seen and what I have read of certain events in the history of independent or just eve of independence India. I did not know until I started work on this book that the BBC, the three letters of the English alphabet, which have always inspired faith and trust. When you say BBC, you feel that there must be some truth in that. Now, the BBC sent, on the eve of India's independence, no one less than Louis MacNeice. I do not know whether he should be called Louis MacNeice or Louis MacNeice, but the great poet came to India to cover the independence proceedings. And I looked up Louis MacNeice, Irish, an independent poet, who has written a poem unconnected with India, but which applies to India on the eve of independence. I'll read a few lines. The poem is called Prayer Before Birth. India was just to be born. This poem is not about India, but it cannot be about anything else. I am not yet born, says Louis MacNeice. I am not yet born. Oh, hear me. Let not the blood-sucking bat, or the rat, or the stoat, or the club-footed ghoul come near me. I am not yet born. Console me. I fear that the human race may with tall walls wall me, with strong drugs dope me, with wise lies lure me, with wise lies lure me, on black racks rack me, in blood baths roll me. This is Louis MacNeice. I will now move to something that happened just before this. Noakhali, East Pakistan, in the village of Dottapada, November 1946. Physically exhausted and worn by a daily imposed ration of less than 600 calories to expiate for what was happening in Bihar, Gandhi learnt of a Hindu household. I am reading fact, and there is no infusion of bias. I am reading fact. That learnt of a Hindu household of 8, including a boy of 15, that had been murdered. Those not killed had been converted. These included a deaf-mute who showed him, tied up in a rag, his shikha that had been forcibly cut. As Gandhi emerged from a dwelling there, his attention was attracted by a Tibetan spaniel, running a few steps past him, turning back and again beckoning. Gandhi's associates tried to drive it away, but no, he said, don't. Don't you see? The animal wants to say something to us. The dog then led them to the skeletons of his master and several others done to death. What he had seen, Gandhi told a group of Muslim leaguers, was the very negation of Islam. Friends, thanks to the intercession of Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee and the kindness of Rajesh Mukherjee, who is present here, a reproduction of that scene in a beautiful painting forms the frontispiece of this book. I will now turn fast forward to a time when India had become Bharat, East Pakistan had become Pakistan, East Pakistan was about to become Bangladesh. And I now read from what I know. What I just read was from what I had read. Today, news aggresses our lives 24/7 from every direction and in multiple modes, audio, visual, and both. We have become thick-eyed and coarse-eared to it. But back then, in 1972, when the radio was really the only thing we could turn it, a receiver with a light and a tune. There used to be a light on the radio. It used to twinkle, and a tune which used to play music before it started. And on the 10th of January, that day, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was stopping in Delhi on his way from London to Dhaka. And we in our Chennai home tuned into AIR, relaying the great meeting that Indira Gandhi had organized on the cantonment parade ground in Delhi. Mujib said, India and Bangladesh will live side by side. But the message, wholly anticipated, was less important than the scene itself. He started in English. We will live side by side. Started the lecture, Sheikh Mujib, with Madam Prime Minister. But, just imagine, Delhi, an ocean of Hindi speakers from Delhi, Punjab, Haryana, that region, demanded that Sheikh Mujib should address them in Bangla. Joy. Bengali mein boliye. And the speaker saw the two-nation theory being thrown out, lock, stock, and barrel. Thrill. And when the Bangabandhu complied, and he did comply, when he complied, Amar Bhai Bonera, then the Hindi audience erupted in a roar of ecstasy and shouts of joy, Joy Bangla. That was the nearest I had gone to a sense of freedom. My mother spontaneously went into the small kitchen of ours and made some payush to celebrate. What we could not see on the radio, we read in the Hindustan Times 2 days later. As Mujib ended his speech, his trademark pipe was in his clenched fist, and the crowd stood up to a man shouting, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman Zindabad. And believe it or not, Indira Gandhi herself acted as the cheerleader with an acclamation of Sheikh Mujib Zindabad. But the Hindustan Times' greatest hit, and as an extremely seasoned writer for the newspapers, Professor Mukherjee will appreciate this. Hindustan Times' greatest hit was in telling us that as that crowd surged to follow Sheikh Mujib's motorcade, just one placard, had its own version of poetry and masterful Janata understanding of geopolitics and the region's ecological imperatives. You know what the placard said, India, Bangla, same blood. Ganga, Podda, same flood. Today, I think of the line from a song by Muhammad Rafi in the film Guide. Kya se kya ho gaya hai? What a change. That country's anger at Sheikh Mujib's daughter and the country's democratically elected dictator, Sheikh Hasina, is understandable. But not so the recoiling of that in a roll back to the nation's founder. This is appalling, as was the vandalization of Mujib's statues, the burning down of his house, and the destruction of the great work of art depicting the surrender of Pakistan's military officers to India's defense forces after they had been liberated, after East Pakistan had been liberated, and after they had opened the path to the creation of Bangladesh. Heinous, heinous. The country's new chief advisor, Muhammad Yunus, called the attacks on Hindu homes and temples which followed, stoking memories of Noakhali and Dattapara. Was the new generation in Bangladesh reversing that country's rejection of the two-nation theory? Was a new Islamization afoot in what Mujib had envisaged as a secular democratic country? I will close now by saying a dog, a mere dog, showed Gandhi the truth in Dattapara. Let no one stop to the polemic. What is truth? You and I know what truth is in our hearts. Shall I tell you why we know what truth is? Very simple. Because we know what a lie is. Truth is difficult to define. सजन रे झूठ मत बोलो, खुदा के पास जाना है, न हाथी है न घोड़ा है, वहाँ पैदल ही जाना है. There is no mistaking lies. Lies can and do win in bazaars, in courts, and even in elections. Blades, bullets, and bombs can and do stain India's dawns, stun its days, scare the wits out of its nights. But they cannot touch India's human truth, which is its very soul, for India knows what lies have and can do. India's light can dim. It will not die.
Thank you for reading those passages, Gopal. And the Dattapara episode provides me the best entry point I could have hoped for. And also the Bangladesh part that you read, because they evoke a very long association that you have in terms of family and, of course, your own presence with Bengal and Bangla. It starts, of course, with your paternal grandfather, who spent a lot of time in Bengal, particularly in those critical months of 46, 47. And before that as well, you have chronicled Gandhi's rather fraught relationship with Bengal in a magnificent book called A Frank Friendship. And then there is this Noakhali incident. That's the first point of your association with Bengal. Gandhi was actually here. Most people don't realize it. He was actually in Calcutta when India became independent. He was not a part of the jubilation in Delhi. Very deliberately made decision that he actually wanted to spend it in Noakhali, the 15th, as you record, in fact. He wanted to spend it in Noakhali, the 14th, 15th of August, but he couldn't get away from Calcutta because of what was happening here. So that's the first point. The second is, when independence happened, your other grandfather, your maternal grandfather, is the governor here. And, so Gandhi and Raja Gopalachari are here when in 48, 47, 48. So that's the second association. You also note a more personal association. Your eldest sibling, Tara, Taru as you called her, we call her Tara Didi. And she married a Bengali because who she met when she was in Shantiniketan, Jyoti Bhattacharya. And you say that when Jyoti first came to your house in Delhi, he sang. He had a beautiful singing voice. He sang Ravindra Sangeet, and your father was particularly fond of his singing of Pagla Hawa Badal Dine and Gram Chhada Oi Ranga Matir Pot. And you say, after that visit of Jyoti, Bengal and Bengali became an integral part of your household. So that's the third entry point. And the last is, you come back here as governor. Was that a closing of a circle? What did you feel when you came here as governor and saw the portraits of one of your grandfathers who had also been the first governor of independent area of Bengal? What were the emotions, the affects that came to your mind or stay in your mind?
It was, emotion was of extreme unworthiness. How can chance and design so conspire to make an unworthy descendant sit at the table and on the chair occupied by a man who had struggled for freedom? Here is somebody who has not struggled for anything, much less for freedom. But then I told myself, look at all the pictures of the many governors who have been here. Today, in fact, we have amongst us the daughter of the second governor of West Bengal, Kailash Nath Kaju, and Saroj Mukherjee deserves a huge hand today. And I looked at the pictures and I said, one day my picture will somewhere be here, and another day my picture will be taken away also. That is the fate of all pictures. I realized more than anything else the transience of high office. And I also realized that those who were present there were being extremely generous and kind. Jyoti Boshu, with all his physical disabilities, Buddhadev, Anil Bishash, all of who now belong to a different and perhaps better world. So, unworthiness, Rudra, and transience, these were my operating emotions.
So, staying a little bit with that same theme, and this is completely unknown, this is the first time you have revealed it in this book, that there was a very serious consideration on the part of Sonia Gandhi that instead of coming as governor of West Bengal, she would have preferred to head one of the institutions named after Jawaharlal Nehru. In fact, you did head one institution named after him in London, the Nehru Center, but she wanted it to be more substantive in India. And she never really gave, as you write, a complete consent to your coming to as governor. She was silent on it. But when you met her personally, she actually said, I would have preferred you to be a head of one of the institutions associated with Jawaharlal Nehru. Would you have preferred that?
I would not have preferred that, not just because Bengal meant what it meant and has always meant and will mean to me, but also because I had a lot of respect, which I still do, to the leadership of the Communist Party, Marxist, and the Communist Party of India, both of which were very keen that I should come here, and who were really instrumental in my coming here. That they had a slightly different opinion of me a little later is a different matter. But that is also the beauty of democratic politics. I felt that the monopoly of one party, namely the Congress, is not a monopoly that should be encouraged when there are other parties. And in fact, at that point, the left and the Congress were in formal alliance, and I wanted to respect that. But Sonia Gandhi's own preference for me, I regarded as a compliment, and as I told her that it was so. But no, the opportunity to play a constitutional role in this state was, I knew, to be a far greater challenge and a far greater opportunity.
So another closing of the circle, while he was in Noakhali with the help of his secretary Nirmal Bose, Gandhi was trying to learn Bengali, how to read it and how to write it, and he actually wanted to read in Bengali, as you have noted elsewhere, Gurudev's song Jodi to Dak Shune Keu Na Ashe. And on Independence Day, when he was asked, or a little before Independence, when he was asked, what is your message to the world? It was his day of silence, so he wrote in Bengali on a piece of paper, Amar Jivoni Amar Bani, my life is my message. And you, as his grandson, when you came here as governor, it was your wish that you be sworn in Bengali, in Bangla. It didn't happen because the acting Chief Justice said that there is no laid down oath taking in the Bengali language. But why this desire? Was Gandhi playing somewhere at the back of your mind as, you know, as a kind of overture that he had tried to learn? And you actually, while you were here, I remember that, I don't know that personally, you learned Bengali.
Well, to be able to read one's oath in the language of the place you are in, if you can do it, and not if you're going to make a mess of it or make a fool of yourself, but you can manage it decently enough, is a great thing to try. And really, I thought it would be only right if people in Delhi, if presidents of India can take their oath in Hindi, if they know Hindi and prefer to do so in Hindi, why should a governor not do it in Bangla? But then I did not take more than a second to agree to the Chief Justice saying, no, don't do it in Bangla, do it in... Because I also thought, you see, on the soil of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, you should not be untrue to yourself. I also saw that in my desire to take the oath in Bangla was not just the desire to taste the beauty of Bangla on my tongue, but to appear to those present as a lover of Bangla, a very cheap emotion to have. I was seeking in the heart of my hearts a cheap popularity for the moment. I have to say this in the land of Ram Mohan Roy.
So I'm going to move now from Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who you invoked, to an individual who is known as Rajaji, your maternal grandfather, who you actually say, and this will surprise a lot of readers of your book, that was the greatest influence in your life. Most people would think that it would be Gandhi, but you were only 2.5 when Gandhi was killed by this Hindu fanatic, whose name also I hate to take on my lips. So will you tell us a little bit about a relationship with your maternal grandfather and what kind of influences he had on you? I know because you just spoke about language, you write about how he introduced you practically to English literature and the writing of the English language, made you read Shakespeare. Maybe we could have a few vignettes of that.
He was a very fond grandfather. And there is another connection between him and Rajbhavan and me, Rajbhavan Kolkata and me, which was not so relevant, so I didn't mention it in the book. And that is this: when those who get into the Indian administrative service during their course of training have something called the Bharat Darshan, and probationers go around the country visiting. So he was in Madras and he knew I was going on Bharat Darshan. I was coming to Kolkata. And he, from his small home in Chennai, wrote a postcard to the then governor of West Bengal, Mr. Dharmavira, to say, my grandson is coming on Bharat Darshan to West Bengal with a group of other IAS probationers. I will be very grateful if you can put him up in Raj Bhavan as your guest. Now, can you imagine the embarrassment of one probationer? I have come with about 15 other probationers, and when our train, it was a train, steamed into Howrah station, there were these red sash, liveried people waiting to take me in their car to Rajbhavan. And all my probationers were laughing at me, teasing me and saying, go, go, go. And they said, it's fun. They said, go to Rajbhavan. You belong there. We are going to sit in this hot train. You go. I said, I'm not going. I sent those people away. But we had a call on Governor Dharmavira. And Governor Dharmavira came into the room looking very angry, staring at the group of probationers saying, who among you is Gopal? So I felt like sinking down. I didn't know that there was that golden cage lift. I would have liked to go down in that, but I just felt. So I said, sir, don't you know you have not only disappointed me, but you've disappointed your grandfather. You were supposed to stay here. And I said, sorry, sir, I should have been more respectful to both of you, but I belong to my batch. Then again, I must also say, there was in me a lurking desire to gain a few brownie points with my batchmates.
On a more serious note, I mean, there was this relationship Rajaji had with the individual who became India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru. And we know from your book that Raja Gopalachari was Nehru's first choice as the President of India. Didn't happen that way because of various reasons which you briefly discuss. And you don't say that in a book, but in a separate piece you once wrote that on the 30th of January 1948, when on the teleprinter the news came of Gandhi's assassination, Raja Gopalachari was actually getting ready to go somewhere from Raj Bhavan. He had an engagement that evening, and he read the telex message. He picked up the phone to speak to Mountbatten, and he had a very short sentence to tell Mountbatten, look after Jawahar. That's all that he said, nothing more. Look after Jawahar. And so there was this very, very close relationship. And it was because of that relationship and also Nehru's fondness for your father, that Nehru often came to your house in Connaught Place, where your father and your mother and all four of you lived, and poked you in the tummy one day and said, "Up to football, tum to football ban rahe." So that it was that kind of a fond relationship. Uh, but they fell out, Rajaji and Nehru. Things were not as smooth in the late 50s till Nehru's death. And there were moments when Raja Gopalachari actually reprimanded Nehru by going publicly saying that people with such tempers shouldn't be heads of state, and very strong words. So, what do you think? Was that difference ideological?
Those were times when you could be friends and you could be frank in your friendship. Being friends did not mean that you agree completely. It also meant that you could disagree publicly. But you know, I have this passion for Hindi film songs. There is this film song, मैं बंदिनी पिया की, मैं संगिनी साजन की. So a person can be the bandini of the piya is the friend. The sangini sajan ki, the sajan is one's own heart. So you can be your piya's bandini and your sajan's sangini, both. And both of them were that. When Nehru was present at the investiture, when Rajaji got the Bharat Ratna. Incidentally, he was the first to get the Bharat Ratna, along with immediately after Radhakrishnan and C.V. Raman, who didn't attend. It's a different story. But immediately after the investiture, there is a little gathering, something called like refreshments. And Rajaji took off the Bharat Ratna from his neck and put it on Nehru's neck and patted him on his cheek. 55. 3 years later, Rajaji was going to form the Swatantra Party. 59. 5 years later, Nehru died. And Rajaji, who had been a very stringent opponent of what he called then the statist policies of the one party which has one leader, he wrote, 11 years younger than I, 11 times more popular, beloved of the nation. He has died, and I am here to mourn. Today, professions of love can be a veneer. Professions of opposition can be a posture. Love and hate, like truth and falsehood, have become interchangeable and indistinguishably so. For Rajaji and Jawaharlal, friendship did not compromise frankness, and frankness did not take away from friendship love. What an uncommon, almost coy phrase love has become.
So, as a historian, I'm very fond of sequence of events, and I don't see them as coincidences all the time. It's amazing that you say that. It never struck me. The first 3 Bharat Ratnas are all from South India. It says a lot.
The first 3 Bharat Ratnas are all from South India, says the honest historian, the clean observer, the unbiased chronicler. But I have heard, Rudra has heard this from me But I'll say it again so many of you may not. My favorite Bangla word is kintu. You can make a 10-minute speech and then convince everybody, and then you say kintu, and then another 20 minutes. So the honest observation would be, my God, Raju Parachari, Radhakrishnan, C.V. Raman, 3 South Indians got the Bharat Ratna. Wow, South India. Kintu. Today, the second thought would be, Kintu, Tini Junu Brahmin. Caste census would be made on the 3 first Bharat Ratnas. But let me say here, I spoke of ego. I know CR had no ego. Radhakrishna's ego had been completely submerged in his scholarship. Kintu, Sir Chandrasekhar Venkataraman, great man that he is, declined to come for the investiture, saying, I have a PhD viva to supervise. I believe, sir, my apologies to physics, to the refractions of light, but when you did not go to Rashtrapati Bhavan to receive the Bharat Ratna, was it duty or was it ego? Ami jani na. But let me conclude this by saying all 3 South Indians, all 3 had a Kolkata connection. Rajagopalachari, governor of Bengal. Radhakrishnan, professor in 10 years. Raman, professor here again, 10 years. Kolkata made them what they are.
Interesting that Kintu, 3 Brahmins, and again it's one of those many revelations that are in these pages. When Ambedkar died, neither the president or the vice president, and the vice president was one of the Brahmins, Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, went to his funeral. I think you are the first to record that.
True.
Rajendra Prasad and Radhakrishnan did not attend the funeral. And Nehru, of course, made one of his most eloquent speeches in Parliament in respect of Ambedkar. And you have a wonderful line which says, Rajendra Prasad and Radhakrishnan have earned our respect. Ambedkar has earned our strength.
True. I think this is another thing which is not known. Ambedkar's disagreements with Gandhi are as high as the Himalaya. And nobody can put them to a side, and they would be the first to proclaim those differences. But it's also true that Ambedkar was big-minded enough as law minister to be there at the funeral when he was very ill himself. He was not able to walk, he was very ill. But he went. But would you believe it? In the several photographs of that famous bloodshot evening, night and next morning, there is not one photographer who captured Dr. Ambedkar at Gandhi's funeral. Why? Was he not important? Was he not a minister? They were all, of course, taking pictures of the person who had been slain, the cortege, but there were many other side pictures, but not Ambedkar. There is such a thing called the subconscious mind. Biases work up front. Biases lurk in the subconscious. And Ambedkar goes back because he couldn't walk. He goes back home and feeds back and comes back again to join the part of him. That too is not photographed. Later on, Ambedkar was to say things about Gandhi and Gandhi's assassination which did not reflect the same emotion. But there is such a thing as a spontaneous moment. If Ambedkar had been given the due respect that his stature, his status deserved when he died, Ambedkar would not have been honored. Those giving him that respect would have honored themselves.
So we spoke about Ambedkar giving strengths, embodying strength. In this book, I got the impression the individual from whom you have derived the greatest strength in your working life, not so much in your childhood, adolescence, student life, is Jayaprakash Narayan. He is the second hero of this book, if I may put it like that. I think this book has one absent hero who is assassinated when you're only 2.5, and then there's your maternal grandfather, and then there's JP, who was part of your student days. You fetched him for the lecture at St. Stephen's, where remarkable, he got into the car and he said, "So Gopu, tell me, what is the subject of my lecture?" He had no idea what he had been asked to speak on. And when you told him, he actually went silent and then gave the most masterful oration at St. Stephen's College. So what is that? What is it about JP that attracts you, even today? And JP has many detractors today.
Well, I must say, let me just ask this question. How many of you have seen Jayaprakash Narayan? You see? Just 3 or 4, 5, 6.
Well, I should
7,
raise my
8.
hand.
So, Jayaprakash belongs well to the past. But I must, thank you, Rudra. I forgot so much about Jayaprakash when I was writing this book, but I will say something which is not perhaps in the book. The reason why I was drawn to Jayaprakash, first of all, is that he spoke the most beautiful English I have heard. He spoke English like no Englishman or Englishwoman can speak. I think the person who came closest to Jayaprakash's English was George Orwell. JP spoke exquisite English. But after the wave of admiration one felt for his language, it was the content of what he said. And what was the content? It's not just that content was Nagaland, was Kashmir, was dacoits. I don't mean that content. What I mean is, when a raga is being sung, the sahitya is bewitching, but the alapa is much more bewitching. What was the alapa in JP? It was the readiness to accept that he could be wrong and you could be right. The readiness to listen to the other person. In the speech which Professor Mukherjee just mentioned in St. Stephen's College, this was within months of the Sino-Indian War. He said, even the Chinese are after all our Asian brothers. Now, at that point, to say this requires guts. So it was the rasa of the alapa which said, you may be right, I may be wrong. Today, I am always right, you are always wrong. That is what attracted me to JP. And I'll just say one final thing about JP. Like, I think everyone in here or anywhere, when you're growing up, you have 2 hobby passions, or that used to be the case. One is stamp collection. The other is autograph collection. Now, I'm passé. Now probably it's not anybody. Now they'll be collecting more interesting stuff. Autograph collection. And my autograph book is so interesting now for what those people said and wrote. JP wrote in the most beautiful handwriting a line from the Bible. Do not do unto others what thou wouldst not others do unto thyself. Now, this was Indira Gandhi and emergency were far away, far into the future. But here is a man who is saying, do not do unto others what thou wouldst not others do unto yourself. And then he gave an equivalent from the Gita, an exact equivalent from the Gita. This was Jayaprakash Narayan. Not wanting to hurt anyone. And when hurt, to be hurt and to be shocked that you have been hurt by somebody. I said I'll say nothing more about JP, but I'll say one more thing. He had in his hands, and this is something which the historian archivist and Professor Mukherjee will appreciate. He had in his hands letters written to his wife, Prabhavati, by Jawaharlal's wife, whom Sarojben knew, I am sure, Kamala Nehru. Intimate letters from Kamala Nehru to Prabhavati. And Jayaprakash went and gave them all, after Prabhavati died, to Indira Gandhi, saying, Beti, ye tum rakho. His friends told him, नहीं, रुकिए, उनको क्यों दे रहे हैं, ये तो आप म्यूजियम में, नहीं, मेरे प्रभावती की कोई संतान नहीं है, कमला की संतान है. And those letters to date have not seen the light of day.
So, interesting parallel here. C.R. Rajagopalachari Nehru and what you said just now, JP and Indira Gandhi, who often called Indu, sometimes called Beti. Confrontation during the emergency. In fact, a lot of people say it's the JP movement that triggered the emergency. 1977, when she's down and out, and you record this, she's visiting Patna. Who does she call on? She calls on JP, and they have tea together. Must have been quite a moment for Jayaprakash, and that I'm not going to hurt somebody who has hurt me. He was living up to what he had written in your autograph book.
He was. Well, I've spoken a lot about him. He is unquestionably my hero. But the beauty and greatness and draw of Jayaprakash is that he's just so impossible to emulate. He's just so great. Thank goodness for somebody like JP. Thank goodness that we had a person like him. And though there are just 7 out of 110, 120 people here who saw him, he remains. And let me tell you, he is remembered in places in India where nobody else is remembered, such as Nagaland and in Kashmir. And he here looks very similar to Badshah Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, who was exactly like that.
So, one parting provocation, and I'll end with that. What strikes me, and I've already done 2 readings of this book, is the enduring optimism that informs this book, your personal relationship with the history of independent India. What is that optimism grounded on, Gopal? Where do you derive that optimism? And the name Undying Light, what is the source of that light which will not ever die?
Well, there are there is more than one source, but one preeminent source is Jawaharlal Nehru. And the words are almost his words. And he said famously, see, he has these two speeches which are memorable. Tryst, his destiny speech. The light has gone out of our lives speech. The light has gone out of our lives. But again, to use the classical music phrase, the light has gone out of our lives, is the Pallavi. But the Anupallavi is far greater, in which he says little later, I said the light has gone out of our lives, and yet I was wrong, for the light that shone was no ordinary light. And here Nehru is not speaking of the man who has been killed, but of the spirit which cannot be killed. And what is that spirit? Between the assassin and the assassinated, there was a transaction. It was not the transaction of death. It was something else, which is why I will write a caveat to what Professor Mukherjee said about the assassin. Yes, it was a heinous act, and something in me, in the pulsation of my blood, rebels against that act, as it only would in anyone whose blood is derived from the same stock. As Harilal Gandhi, his eldest son, who on hearing of the death, unlike his other brothers, one of who fasted, all of who cried, Harilal Gandhi said, I will kill the man who has murdered my father. What was the transaction between the assassin and the assassinated? It was not the transaction of death. He shot the man because he thought he had been impelled by his Hindu faith to shoot him. Did anyone come to Gandhi's aid, to Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi's aid? Did the police, did the military, did the Home Ministry? No. Escorting him from life to immortality was Rama. He said, hey Rama. Rama came and stood there in all his magnificence, absorbed him into himself, completely transformed that moment into epiphany. Epiphany. That is what I take from that moment. And that is why I feel we are all destined to see that light glow, not in the same or another voltage, but in changing, self-illuminating, self-renewing forms of enlightenment. Rama did not escape Gandhi's lips for nothing. He escaped from the barrel of the assassin's gun into a completely new power that has activated the conscience of India and will always do so. It is the conscience of India that will not die.
Thank you, Gopal. I'm quite choked by those last comments, and I'm going to use my discretion and not allow any questions to break that mood. Thank you once again, Gopal. Come back to Calcutta soon to inspire us and to be our exemplar.
Thank you very much. This room has witnessed many conversations, but I think all of you will agree if I say that this has been one of the very, very best that we have witnessed. Our deepest gratitude to Shri Gandhi and Dr. Mukherjee. And Shri Gandhi, you spoke about the Alap and then the Pallavi, but I think listening to you was so fulfilling. So you took us from the Alap to the Atidrut, the entire gamut. Thank you very much. We're all very grateful. On behalf of the Bengal Club, may I request Mrs. Anuradha Ray to please felicitate Shri Gopalkrishna Gandhi ji. And may I request Mrs. Nandini Das to please felicitate our very own Dr. Rudrangshu Mukherjee, one of the most distinguished members of this club, and of course, one of the greatest historian of our times. And on behalf of the Library Subcommittee, a big thank you to Mr. Manoj Mahanka for his help with this event, and our librarian, Ms. Shivonti Sengupta. Thank you very much.